It's time to pull this engine out, take it apart all the way down to the block. Now we can take the intake out. It leaked transmission fluid all over my garage floor. End of the dipstick got broken off, so I'm going to need to get a new dipstick.
A little bit, but I think it's fun. You know, maybe some of the expert builders can answer that question better.
Hey guys, well, it's time. If you've watched any of the other videos on this 85 Ford F-150, you know that I've been having crankcase pressure issues, and it's blowing oil out the top of my valve cover and out the dipstick tube. So that means I've got blow-by, meaning I need to have new piston rings. So it's time to pull this engine out, take it apart all the way down to the block, look at the pistons, the rings, see if we need new pistons. If the pistons are still in good shape, we'll just put new rings on it after we hone out the cylinders. And I'm also thinking about putting a little higher lift cam in it. So we're going to do a couple different videos, probably a 2 or 3 part video. First part is just going to be how we pull the engine out of the truck. So all the different steps we have to do for that. We'll get it on the engine stand, and then we'll shoot another video of tearing the engine down, honing the cylinders, putting new rings on it, new cam, new bearings, all that stuff. And then the third video will be putting it all back together and seeing how it runs when it's all rebuilt. So stay tuned, follow along, and learn how we pull an engine out, rebuild it, and put it back in. So the first step we're going to do is to, before I drain the radiator and make a big mess on my floor, I'm going to have to crawl under the vehicle, disconnect the exhaust collectors, take the starter off, take the exhaust manifold out, disconnect it from the transmission, and then we'll come up here and do the top work. So then we'll drain the radiator, and of course that's going to spill coolant on the floor and make a mess. So I don't really want to be crawling under the truck when there's a bunch of fluids under the truck. So we're going to get all that underneath stuff done first. Actually, the first thing we'll do is we'll take the battery out, disconnect the power, take that out, and then we'll get underneath it and start disassembling. So follow along. We'll show you how this is done. All right, taking out the battery is pretty simple. We just need to disconnect the cables real quick here. It's probably the easiest thing we're going to do. All right, now that I got the battery out, I'm going to crawl underneath the engine, and the first thing I'll do is disconnect the collectors so that I can loosen up the exhaust manifold and get my starter out. All right, the collectors are pretty simple and straightforward. It's just 3 bolts on each one. So I've got dual exhaust. I got this set here and then the set back there. So I just need 9/16 wrench and socket, and I'll pull those off real quick. Okay, I got all those collector bolts off. Now I did find out when I was taking those bolts off that almost all of them, except for 2 of them, were actually really loose. I could have just taken all the other ones off with my fingers. And so I had just had this exhaust put on a few months ago. The shop didn't put them on very tight. So if you get new exhaust, make sure you check your bolts and make sure they're tight. The other thing I've did in preparation is I've labeled a bunch of Ziploc bags here so that I can put my bolts in bags and not miss any or lose any. So for all the major components here, I've got a separate bag for all of the nuts and bolts, and for this one here I've got one for my exhaust collectors. So I'm just gonna, as I go along here, I'm just going to bag up all my nuts and bolts. That way when it comes time to put them back together, I don't have to guess which ones go where. Now I just realized that in order to get my starter out, I need to loosen up my exhaust manifold so I can move it out of the way a little bit and get to my starter, which is down there wrapped in some heat wrap. So before I unbolt the starter, I am going to take my intake, my carburetor off, and my exhaust manifold, take those bolts off. Kind of want that light to stay up there, so let me try to... I put this Holley 4160 carb on it. The original carburetor that came with this engine was a single barrel carb, and I put this 4-barrel with vacuum secondaries on here. And I am still having some issues with too much fuel flow, so when I get this engine put back together, I'm going to have to figure out what's going on with that. I have jetted it down from jet size 52s to 46s. It's probably going to have to be jetted down even further than that. So we'll get that figured out once we get the engine put back together. All right, so it's just 4 nuts holding that carburetor on. We're going to dip. Stupid light. So I'm just going to disconnect this power lead from the carburetor choke, disconnect my vacuum lines, and then disconnect the accelerator cable. There we go. That should just lift right off there like that. Oh, I forgot to take off that fuel line, so we got to take that off next. All right, this is going to probably leak some fuel, so let's see. I probably need a cup or something to catch that fuel with. Can you hold that right there? All right. Got it. We're going to leave the spacer plate on there. I don't really need to take that off because I'm just going to take these bolts off here and get the intake off. And so that's what we'll work on next. Okay, while I'm taking these manifold bolts off, Jack's going to take off the fan and we'll start to disassemble that stuff. So when we take the radiator out, we'll be able to work in here. So he's going to take the 4 bolts that are holding the fan on, and I'll continue to get these manifolds off here. All right, the other thing I got to do while Jack's taking those off, in order for me to get this manifold off, there's a bolt behind there. You can't really see it, but it's down in there. And I need to get this alternator out of the way. So I'm going to remove this alternator. So it's just 2 wires here and then a couple bolts that I'll take off that'll take the alternator off. Okay, so we got the alternator off, but we realized that taking the fan blade off, these bolts are too long to get out. So we're going to have to wait and get the radiator drained before we can actually get that fan bolt, those fan bolts off. So we did get the alternator off, and now we can reach under here and get the other bolt that's holding on the exhaust manifold. So we'll do that next. Okay, we got the manifold bolts out, so now we can take the intake out. And you can see the gasket's just going to come apart there, but this is the new fuel intake that I put on a few months ago. It's an Offenhauser. This thing is supposed to be awesome, and so far it has been great. But so we're just going to take that off and set it off to the side, and then we can take the rest of the bolts off for the exhaust manifold and then start working on the starter. We got the starter out and the exhaust manifold out, and boy, that was a real pain in the butt. But next thing we got to do is take the bolts off the flywheel that's connecting the engine to the transmission. So what we're going to have to do is I'm going to get underneath there and take the bolt off, and then Jack's going to have to turn the engine so that I can advance to the next bolt until we get them all off. So that'll be the next thing that we do. And actually before that, Jack, we're going to have to take the spark plugs out so we can take the compression out of the cylinders as we turn it by hand. So these bolts under here, we're having to get these out off the flywheel that's connected to the torque converter. So there's, I can't remember how many bolts are on here, but we have to get those off. And for each one I get off, I have to have somebody else turn the engine up front to advance it to the next bolt. Got the flywheel bolts off. Now Jack's disconnecting the power steering pump, and we'll take that off and get those belts off there. And then we'll take the bell housing bolts off and jack up the transmission so it doesn't drop out. And then all the underneath work will be done. All right, got the radiator out, made a big old mess down there. Got most of it in the bucket, but still made a mess. So now Jack's gonna take the fan bolts off.
Yeah.
Turn it, make sure it's going backwards.
It is.
It's not.
Yeah, it is.
See. Pull it through. Okay, it is.
Is it not half inch? It might be. Wrong size.
Okay, we are now pulling the engine out of here, but you can see there's a, well, you'll see in a minute, there's a huge mess of transmission oil underneath the truck, and you'll see why when I pulled the engine away from the transmission. It pulled the torque converter out with it and drained all the oil out of the torque converter. So it leaked transmission fluid all over my garage floor. So make sure when you're doing this, you've got a bag of oil dry so that you can spread that on your spills and contain that. Really important. So we're getting the engine out of here now, and we're just jacking it up. Actually, it came out really easy. Pretty happy with how easy it's come out. Yeah, we're almost ready to clear it. A little bit more.
Right, it's clear.
Okay, so now that it's clear, and we got enough clearance to get the oil pan over the top of the engine compartment here, we'll go ahead and slowly start to bring this back. You don't want to make any sudden moves with this thing because it could rock and tip this thing over and hit, the engine will hit the ground. So really slow movements as we just try to pull this back. Okay, there we have that. Now I'm going to let it down a little bit.
Careful, it gets up very fast.
Yeah, gotta go real slow. All right, I think I'm gonna leave it right there because we still have to drain the oil out of the engine. Okay, so you can see how we hooked up we've got a load balancer on here, and this is really important. So as you're pulling it out, you need to tilt the engine back and forth a little bit, and this load balancer just cranks and shifts the load from one side to the other. But so you can see what we did here. We took the valve cover off, and we just found 3 points on this thing. I didn't hook up the fourth one here because I got 2 strong ones, one on each side here, and then I got a safety one over here so the engine wouldn't roll on me. You can kind of see in here where the torque converter came out of the bell housing for the transmission, and ideally that torque converter would stay in there and it wouldn't leak all the oil out. But it did come out. I got to take it off and get it put back in there, but it leaked all the transmission fluid out of there, made a big mess. But that's okay. The oil dry will pick that up. And you can also see where we use this ratchet strap to hold up the bell housing for the transmission. So we put a safety jack underneath there just to be safe, real safe, but we should be able to lower that jack and just let it rest on that safety strap now. So next thing we're going to do is get this thing put on the engine stand and start taking it apart. So we'll drain the oil out of it. We'll take all the parts off the engine, take the oil pan off, take the head off, and then we're going to start taking out the pistons, see what kind of shape they're in, and that's where we're really going to start to look at what all we need to do to this engine. So we're going to start taking this thing apart, and first thing we're going to do is just take off the oil filter here. All right, next thing we're going to do is take off the distributor, and that's going to be a 1/2-inch wrench. We got the retaining clip off the distributor, and we should just be able to lift that right out of there, easy peasy. All right, there is our dipstick. And I noticed on this one too, the dipstick, end of the dipstick got broken off. So I'm going to need to get a new dipstick. And this was broken off when I got the truck, but it's not long enough to tell me whether or not I've actually got enough oil in here. It is up on the edge of this dipstick, but I want a full length dipstick. So that's another part I'm going to have to replace. Okay, so now we're going to take off the lifters. Just loosen those up. And I like to do this with a with hand tools instead of using impact gun or battery operated drivers, because I like to feel each of these bolts, how they feel, how tight, how loose they were. There's nothing can replace being able to feel how each part is as you're taking parts apart and putting them back together. So I'm just going to loosen these up real quick with the hand ratchet. Now that they're all loose, I've had a chance to feel them all. I'm going to then use the driver to just speed up the process a little bit. Okay, those are all loose, so I can take those and put them into a box here. And I'm just going to take these and lift them off with the bolt in them and just set them in my box here. So now I want to pull out my push rods, but I want to make sure that these stay in the same order, because I want to put them back. If I do decide to use these same ones, I want to put them back in the same spot that they were. So I'm going to get a piece of cardboard, a cardboard box, and punch in 12 holes so I can just insert those and hold them into the box in the right order. So I'll be right back with that. Here's what I've done. Thanks to Amazon, I always have boxes laying around. So I just punched in 12 holes, numbered all 12 holes, and now I'm just going to go ahead and take my push rods, starting with number 1 here. Just take a quick look at that, take the oil off, and just put that into the box there. Okay, there's all the push rods. We're done with that. On to the next step. All right, next step, we're going to take off the head bolts here, and I'm going to use my torque wrench because my breaker bar, I broke the 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch adapter. So I'm just going to use my torque wrench because it already has the right size and I can leverage the length of it to take these off. So the way I like to do these is same as when I was putting them on. I start in the middle and I start loosening in a pattern going from one side to the next. So you're not loosening up the whole head in one area. You're slowly loosening up each of the bolts in the head. If I remember right, I torqued these to final torque was 80 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to do this in a counterclockwise pattern. Go back over here. Now, if you take your head off and put it on more than a few times, it's probably a good idea to get new head bolts. They're not meant to go on and off multiple times. And that's a really important bolt. So if it gets any stress on it, you probably want to make sure you get a fresh bolt, because the head is something you don't want coming loose due to a broken bolt. Okay, we've got them all loosened up now. Now I can go ahead and just take the bolts out, and we'll go from there. Now, before I take these bolts all out of the way, or all the way out, I want to just call out that the ones that are on the outside of the valve cover versus the ones that are inside, the ones on the outside have a washer on them, and the ones that are in the inside do not have a washer. So I believe these sit just a little bit lower on the outside, so they've got a washer to make sure that the bolts don't bottom out, I guess. And the other way I know that these are the outside ones is they've got blue paint on the ends of them. So I know that those will go on the outside. All in all, we had 14 head bolts, got 14 out, and now we can go ahead and pull the head off. Okay, now that we've got the head loosened up, we can go ahead and take this head off, and it's probably going to spill some coolant if I can actually get this thing off. All right, so that thing's on there pretty good. I'm going to have to take a rubber mallet and give it a little motivation here. All right, hopefully that's loose now. There we go. Pull the head off and just set it over here on the bench. Got a little bit of gasket material there, got stuck on there, but head doesn't look too bad. I don't really see any areas where it was leaking out beyond the gasket, except for maybe this area right here. I'm not sure. That one's kind of low. It's got a little bit of a low spot. So that shouldn't have been leaking anything from the cylinder though. It's just there's nothing leaking from a water jacket into any other part of the gasket, except for a couple areas here that are a little bit low. So when I put the last gasket on, I put some spray on copper spray, some gasket spray to make a better seal, and I'll have to get all of that off. But that's going to be after we hone out the cylinders here. So we're going to be pulling these pistons out and checking to see what kind of shape they're in. This one here looks like it's got a little something there, but there's a bit of carbon in there. It's not too bad. They all actually look like they're in pretty decent shape. The valves, I'm not really sure what to make of this. So these all have, they're all pretty dry, but we've got a little bit of moisture there, a little bit more over here, and this valve is completely wet. So we know that I was having a really rich mixture burn in this, and I wonder if this might be the cylinder that it was happening in. Let's see, this is the number 6 cylinder, so that one's all the way towards the back. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Next up, we're going to take the oil pan off. So this is a 1/2 inch socket for the oil pan. And again, I'm just going to loosen those up with a ratchet wrench here. And I'll come back again and take them off with a speed driver. I just want to see if there's any that are particularly loose. There we go. And there is a bolt inside here that is off inside the oil pan. So something came loose in there. I don't know what it was, but there's just a bolt laying in there. What could that be? Could be the oil pump. Oh my goodness. That oil pump is totally loose. All right, when I took that oil pan off, I noticed that there was a bolt laying in the oil pan, and that's where it came from. So apparently when I put this thing back together, I either didn't tighten those down well enough or somehow they came loose. I'm guessing it was my fault that I didn't check to see if they were tight as they were supposed to be. So the next thing I did is loosen up this harmonic balancer with a gear puller. So that one will just come off now. All right, so that will help us when we need to take the crankshaft out. All right, next I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling off these caps to the pistons, the piston rods. Those things are on there pretty tight. Yeah, definitely probably needs to be replaced. So there's definitely some wear there. All right, there's number 2. And that ring just broke right off. So yeah, that was not good. Broken ring on that one. There's number 3. All right, let's see how that one looks. Yeah, that ring is broken as well. Dang. Got a little wear on the side of that one there. Let's see on the side of the piston here. It's got some really weird grooving there. We'll have to check out the cylinder wall. We'll tip it over in a minute and look at the cylinder wall. I don't see any big issues with the cylinder wall, but I'm not really sure why that worn piece looks like that. So far, I think I made the right decision to pull this thing apart and start replacing some of these parts. I can see why I was getting blow by with those compression rings broken. There we go. Number 4. Now the ring's not broken on that one. Doesn't look too bad. And number 6. No broken rings on number 6. I don't see any significant wear. I don't see any cracks in the skirt. All right, next step, we're just gonna turn this thing over and take a closer look at the cylinder walls. I don't see any cross hatching on the cylinder walls. It is awfully smooth. So yeah, these things are gonna definitely need to be honed out. Guess who showed up? Jeff's here in the garage. So we got this engine taken apart. We took the pistons out and let's see, what all we do? We took the
Took everything out.
yeah,
Pulled
we
the
took
cam out
everything
of
out,
it.
took the cam out of it,
Everything looks good.
and the cam's sitting over here. Yeah, so some of these what do you call these? The journals, or the on the crankshaft. A little bit of wear on those. Not terrible.
And actually, if there's more knowledgeable engine people than us, Just flip it over and they can look at it. Okay. So, I personally think it's okay. There's a few of them that looks a little, it's got a little, but they're smooth. I personally think polishing it by hand right here in the garage and putting a set of bearings in it is all it really needs.
No, you just washed your hands.
Yeah. So.
So
Got wear, but
a little bit of a groove where the oil hole, I
right.
guess, is causing that.
Yeah, that's where those lines are, is just from the oil hole on the top. But it looks, I mean, it's got a little bit, but I think it's fine. You know, maybe some of the expert builders can answer that question better.
Yeah, so the what we did find on the piston rings, there was a couple piston. Guys, knock it off!
We'll just
We had
put
some
one
broke
in.
piston rings,
And
came out in pieces, and the gap on these piston rings was huge. So Jeff's gonna flip this thing over, show what that looked like.
so that's the gap. It's about 100 thousandths.
And it's supposed to be 4,000ths.
So, I think the same thing with these, with the O-rings. Yeah, look at this one. Here.
That's a huge gap.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's measured in
Inches.
Yeah, that's 3/8 of an inch. I've never seen one with that big of a gap.
That's crazy.
And then these.
That's got a decent gap too.
Yeah.
So no wonder I was having blow-by. Excessive crankcase pressure. But the cylinder walls themselves don't look too bad. There's no cross-hatching left on them, so it definitely needs to be honed out.
And it's been bored 60 over. I don't know if you can read that. It's got 60 over pistons. And I personally believe what they did was they bored it 60 over, put 60 over pistons in it, and mistakenly put stock rings in it. I really do. Because I can't imagine how there's not enough wear in it, there's not enough ridge to have that kind of a gap. So, I don't know. I kind of think they messed up and put a set of stock bore rings in a 60 over cylinder.
Yeah. So the pistons themselves look okay. We can reuse those.
Yeah.
Just get new rings for them. So 60 over rings. And then the bearings for both the crankshaft and the, both sets of bearings.
Rods and mains.
The rods and mains, 20 thousandths over. Is that what you said?
The rods and mains were, they were 20 over. So somebody's already turned the crank.
Okay.
So I think so. I think that, unless some viewers have some insight that we don't know, I think put a set of bearings in it, polish the crank by hand, put rings in it, and a new cam for sound, and put it back together.
Right on. So I'm going to get to ordering parts, and as soon as they come in, then we'll get back together and start putting this thing back together. Hopefully we can get it done within the next week or so.
And it live.
But we're going to go ahead and post this video. So in this video, you've seen us taking out the engine out of the truck, taking it apart on the stand here to assess what it really needs, so we know what parts we need to order right now. We're going to do that, and the next video is going to be us honing out the cylinders, putting the new bearings in, polishing the crankshaft, putting a new cam in, new lifters, probably roller lifters, and then we'll get it put back together and see how it works out. So that'll be video number 2. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so when the new videos drop, you won't miss it, and you can follow along on the rest of the project here. All right, that's it. Thanks everybody for watching.